My name is Frank Demaray. I'm the Deputy Director at the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. And today we'll be talking about and starting the conversation and the support for yourself and your properties and your residents with the rental assistance that was announced last Friday publicly, and that we've been positioning with the federal funds that were awarded to the county. We know that this is critical funding and critical time. We very much appreciate the opportunity to present this to you. And I just want to position that this is a very significant commitment of federal funds to rental assistance. It's a significant opportunity at the individual level and at the property level. But we also know that these processes, these transactions of making everything work is going to take some time. So what you'll learn today, we'll keep working with you, and we'll keep listening for things that we can do better. So just want to assure you that this is an ongoing effort to support you and support your properties and your residents. We have today our Department of Health and Human Services, which is the county department, which is managing, administering these programs, and Department of Housing and Community Affairs, DHCA, is supporting this effort. We have engaged nonprofit tenant support organizations who can work with you and work with your tenants. So we'll be hoping to communicate as best we can all of that support. So fundamentally, the county's committed to you and your tenants through a number of efforts. You'll hear about it today, and you'll keep getting updates from us as we move forward. So the most important thing today is for understanding of this eligibility and process. Alana Branda from the Department of Health and Human Services is going to lead this presentation. Questions can be submitted into the chat or the Q&A. And as the presentation goes through, we'll try and answer all the questions that you offer today, and then make available a recording of this that you can share with others, that we can share with other property management and landlords, but also we'll be following up on the questions and issues that we're not able to get to today. So with that, I'm going to ask Ilana Branda to start this discussion. And we might have lost Ilana.
Yeah, Frank, I'm just getting a message from her now that she lost audio. Okay. Yeah, she has really been struggling with her computer this week. The good news is she and I have been collaborating on the slides that she was planning to present. So I'm happy to get things started. And when she's able to rejoin us, I'm sure that she will let us know that she's here. So on that note, I will just start sharing my screen and we can go from there. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen now. I am currently in PowerPoint here to talk about the new phase of funding to prevent and end homelessness in the county. So I will start by talking about the things that are of relevance to your tenants who will be applicants to the program. And from there, I can talk about the specifics of how the program works for landlords. So the most important thing for applicants to keep in mind is that there are 4 key criteria that they need to meet in order to qualify. If they meet those 4 criteria, then they are eligible for up to $12,000 per household. And I'm seeing a chat. Someone is asking me to change my view. I recognize that this might not be everyone's preferred way of looking at things. It works for me. But the good news is I can make these slides available to be sent out after the discussion today. So the 4 key criteria that your tenants need to meet are, first, that they have experienced a loss of income related to the pandemic. So that can be anything from having lost hours at work to being laid off to having to stay home to care for family members. The other things that they need to keep in mind are that they need to owe you, the landlord, at least $1,000, and they need to have lived in the county since at least August of 2020. The final qualification point has to do with their income. So I know in previous phases of this program, the income kind of barrier for the program was a little bit different. But in phase 3 of the program, we need our applicants to earn no more than 50% of the area median income. And that was a change that we made in order to make sure that the funds were getting to the communities in the county that most need the assistance, and based on analysis of those who received funds in the previous phases of the program. So there is a chart on this slide that shows you what the maximum income is based on household size. And again, I'll make these slides available after the presentation today, so you'll be able to look at that more closely. A few other things for your tenants, our applicants, to keep in mind. We will not be reviewing applications on a first come, first serve basis. I repeat, that is not how we are going to do this. Instead, there are certain restrictions that have been placed on the money that we are using to fund this program. And those restrictions mean that we have to give priority to applicants who have been unemployed for more than 90 days, and for those who come from communities that have been particularly hard hit by the pandemic. And when I talk about those communities that have been hardest hit, what I mean is that we are prioritizing applications from certain communities that you can see listed down here. We also have a map that shows you the specifics of which parts of these neighborhoods are being prioritized. And the good news is that map is interactive, so you'll be able to interact with it online after the presentation today. The good news for your applicants is that they will be welcome to apply regardless of their immigration status. We do not care if they have a social security number or a tax identification number. We also do not care if they have received funds in previous phases of the program. So if they were already funded, they are welcome to reapply. The only thing to keep in mind is that if they were funded previously, then the amount of money that they were given in that earlier phase of the program is deducted from the total amount of funds that they are eligible for now in phase 3. So we say that folks are eligible for up to $12,000 a household. If, for instance, you had a tenant who received $4,000 in a previous phase, then they would be eligible for up to $8,000 in this phase of the program. And that's because 8,000 plus 4,000 equals 12,000. The other thing to keep in mind, although I recognize that this may not impact many of you directly, is that we are accepting applications regardless of the formality of the housing situation. So obviously, if you are a property manager for an apartment building, then you'll have a formal lease with your tenants. But we do know that there are a large number of informal housing arrangements throughout the county, people who rent a room or who pay their friends in exchange for being able to stay on a couch. And we welcome those applicants as well. We understand that many of those individuals are some of the county's most vulnerable, and we want to make sure that they are not at risk of homelessness. Okay, this is the map that I mentioned that shows you more of the specifics of which neighborhoods we regard as having a high impact from the pandemic. And so these are the neighborhoods that we will be prioritizing applications from. As I said, this map is available online, so you'll be able to zoom in much more closely and figure out if your address is part of these neighborhoods highlighted in purple. I always get questions about that, so I will be happy to come back to that at the end of the presentation today. And Frank and Lorraine, I'm sure you're keeping tabs on the chat. If we do hear from Alana, as I said, I'm happy to hand the mic back to her. But now we can get into the specifics that are going to be most relevant for the landlords. So it's important that you know that both you, the landlord, and your tenant must participate. But the good news is, in this phase of the program, either the tenant or you as the landlord can start the application. We ask both parties to be involved so that they can verify the information that the other person has provided. Something that is also important for you to know is that if your tenant starts the application first, you'll receive an email prompting you to supply some information so that we can make sure what we have from the tenant is accurate. If you are doing that kind of support for your tenants, in addition to starting applications for other tenants, you will actually need 2 separate accounts in order to do that. So one account to verify information your tenants are putting forward, and one account to actually start applications on behalf of your tenant. Now, in the majority of those cases, all we're really asking you to do is verify how much they owe you and what their monthly rental obligation actually is. And we take that information into account when we consider how much money to award an applicant, so those numbers do matter. Good news is this money is not a loan, it's a grant. So if your tenant is successful in their application for assistance, then in most cases that money is going to be sent straight to you and it is yours to keep. If you have applicants who applied in earlier phases of the program, we are still encouraging them to apply in phase 3. We need everyone to apply in phase 3, regardless of whether they were waitlisted or applied earlier. And that's because we are using a new online application system, so we were not able to save data from previous phases. We also recognize that with this online application system, there is an assumption that tenants have access to internet and to an email address. And we know that unfortunately not everyone in the county does. So if you as the landlord want to encourage your tenants to apply, certainly feel free to share information about this program. We have a variety of flyers about the program available in a variety of languages on the application website. But you might also want to consider, if you are a property manager, allowing your tenants to book time to come and apply using your computer or just using your Wi-Fi if that's something you can supply. And that will help ensure that folks have more equal access to actually applying to the program. And certainly, if a tenant asks you to supply information such as a rental ledger, we do hope that you will participate, because that certainly makes it much easier for us to process their application. So I also know that in previous versions of this presentation, and perhaps some of you are here today, I've spoken with landlords or property managers who are part of companies that own or manage multiple properties. If you want to start applications for tenants across all of those buildings, you are very welcome to. The only question that you might be kind of starting to think about now is how the checks for this program are going to be distributed once we start awarding funds. So the question there is, do we send one check to your main address and that covers tenants in all of your buildings? Or do we send an individual check to each of your properties just to cover the tenants in those specific buildings? The answer to that question is dependent on how you are registered as a vendor with the county. Unfortunately, that's not something that I or Alana can change for you. So we recommend that you start by visiting the county vendor system online with the website that is here in my slide and that you'll be able to access later, and double check how the addresses for your properties are registered in that system. That's going to be our primary way of determining where to send checks, and we want to make sure that they are going to the right place so that we can satisfy the obligations that your tenants have to you. Now, I will say there are a couple of restrictions in place that go along with you actually accepting the funds. So those restrictions are rules that the state put on how this money can be used. And it means that there are requirements that you agree to if you accept this money. So if you agree to accept this money on behalf of your tenants who owe you funds, you also have to agree to forgive any late fees, penalties, interest, or legal fees associated with the debt that they currently owe you. So I want to be clear about this. If you have a tenant who applies in the month of April and you agree to accept money from this program to pay for what they owe you from January to April, you cannot charge any fees on the amount that they owe you for that time. But if we don't get around to actually awarding those funds until, say, June or July, then you may apply fees to the amount that they owe you from June and July. You just cannot accept, you can't put those fees on any funds that you're accepting from the county. The other thing that you have to agree to is that if you take these funds, you will cancel any current eviction actions against the tenant in question, and you are not allowed to restart those proceedings for 30 days after receipt of funds. If you have a tenant whose lease has expired, you are required to offer them a 90-day renewal of that lease. They may not accept it, and that's okay, but you are required to offer it. I know there has been a little bit of concern as to whether these were requirements or requests, and I do want to be really clear, these are requirements. I know when we were initially launching this program, there was some conversation that that might not be the case, and I can tell you that the decisions around making this a requirement were influenced very heavily by the rate of evictions currently taking place in Montgomery County. Now we're seeing evictions at a much higher rate than we would see in pre-pandemic times, and we really need to keep people in their homes. So that was why these rules came into place, and that's why these are requirements. Okay, so it's also important for you to keep in mind as you start discussing this program with your tenants that this is a two-step application process. So the first thing that your tenants will do if they're beginning this application by themselves is they'll take a little pre-eligibility screening online. It's similar to online quizzes that you might do. Now that pre-eligibility screening is really just checking to make sure that the tenant satisfies the 4 key eligibility criteria that go along with this program. Once we can be sure that they do satisfy those 4 criteria, then they're allowed to start the actual application. That's the point at which we ask them to provide us with an email address. So I recognize that there are some tenants who may not have regular access to email. The good news is there are a number of nonprofits across the county that are willing to work with tenants in that situation, but perhaps you as property managers may also be willing to help. And so if you are willing to provide your email address, you can allow your tenant to use that email as the primary login email for their application. And you are allowed to help multiple tenants in that way. So several tenants could use your email if that's what you allow them to do. It is, however, important for your tenants to know that that then means that your email address is going to be the one receiving all of the communication about their application. So they have to feel comfortable with you having access to that data. As I mentioned earlier, you as a landlord need to have 2 accounts. One that allows you to provide the documentation tenants need to support applications that they started themselves, and one portal, one account where you can start applications on their behalf. The great news about this new online application system is that it then means you are able to check on the status of your application. So we've got sort of several statuses along the way that will tell you when a case has been assigned to a caseworker, where they are in reviewing the documents that are a part of that application, all of that along the way so that you no longer have to email us or call us if you want information about your application. Now, this application, as well as all of the documents around it, are available in the 7 most commonly spoken languages in the county. So depending on what your tenant population looks like, we have information about the program available in all 7 of those languages. We also received a lot of feedback from earlier phases of the program about the speed with which we were reviewing applications, and we know that it did take quite a while for us to look at those applications. So the good news is we have doubled the number of caseworkers who are available to review applications. They will start looking at those on Monday, and we are really making every effort to try and speed up this process. So we have heard you, and we are trying to respond to that concern. Last but not least, a few tips and tricks that we've already been receiving from our beta testers who have been in this program for the last week or so. And these are things that have just come through from people trying to start this process just like you. So one thing to keep in mind, if you're a landlord and you're starting application on behalf of several tenants, bear in mind you're only going to want to upload supporting documentation for one tenant at a time. And when you upload that documentation, all of it must be the same file type. So all Word documents or all PDFs, and all of those files together cannot exceed more than 10 megabytes. It's also just important for you to know how you are registered within the county's central vendor registration system. That was what I mentioned earlier in regard to where your checks will be sent. So we just really urge you to stay on top of that before you start this application process. You can see I've also listed out here the kinds of information that we will ask you for in terms of the financial specifics of a given applicant. And there is also a particular data point which is the client confirmation ID number. And what we're seeing is that in some early applications, that number was actually input in the wrong part of the application. Now that's totally fine. The only challenge there is that when we see it on the back end, it then makes it look as though the application has been filled out incorrectly and it's incomplete. Even though that's not true, that's what it looks like. And it means it's just going to take us a little bit more time to process those applications. So in an effort to try and keep things moving along as quickly as possible, we just ask you to try and be really specific and careful when you fill out these documents. What I will say is that it's my email that receives questions around this. I've already received a number of emails from folks who say, oh no, I input the wrong phone number for my tenant or my landlord, or oh my gosh, I put down the wrong address. The good news is once a case is actually assigned to a caseworker for review, they are going to be reaching out to the applicant and the landlord in question. So if there are any little errors like that, you can correct those errors when the caseworker reaches out to you. And so that's something to keep in mind if you don't realize you've made that mistake until after you submit the full application. Once you hit submit, unfortunately, there's no editing it. You can't go back in and change things. But if you decide you're going to give yourself a couple of days to fill out the forms, then certainly you can go back and check on the work that you did the day previously. Just double check it, make sure that data is all in good shape. And then once you're feeling really confident about it, you can go on ahead and hit submit. Now, I also like to have a slide that I've ended up hiding for a couple of other reasons, but mostly what that prompts us to say is that those of us at Services to End and Prevent Homelessness who are running this program really want to see this be a success, right? We really do want to keep people in their homes, and we want to try and make it so that you don't need to evict them. So to that end, we are here to receive questions from you and, constructively put together feedback. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out along those lines. We do want to do what we need to do to make this program a success. So on that note, I will just simply summarize. This is the application website. It's mc311.com/rent relief. Theoretically, your households will be available for up to $12,000. So we do hope that you will spread the word and help your tenants apply. And we're here for you if you have questions. So thanks so much. And I'll stop staring my screen now.
I'll note that Alana has been able to reactivate and let her introduce herself and follow up.
Okay. I am here. My camera clearly isn't, so I apologize. And thank you, Joanna, for expertly going through that. So I'm going to leave my camera off so you can at least pretend to see what I look like. I'm going to try to share my screen for a moment. Hopefully it'll work. Before we get to the questions, there's a couple points that we've seen where are really the hiccup points, and I just wanted to, show you guys in the portal what that's going to look like for you. So as Joanna mentioned, there is a different account you need if you're doing the tenant side versus the landlord side. So I'm going to get to that in a second, but you're starting from our main page. Once you've already set up your account, you can log in. Otherwise, you want to start from a new application the first time. So I am in one of the a test landlord application at the moment. So I just want to go back a couple of pages. It does save, as you're doing it, so you can come back and work on it later. But the first page, you're just going to be asked to provide information about yourself, who's completing the application. On the next page, it's the CVRS registration. If you are registered, it will ask you for your registration information. Otherwise, you can follow the link and get yourself registered, please, ideally before you submit the application. And then here is, I know where some of the questions are coming up. If you just have one tenant that you are submitting an application for, we recommend that you just go into the add a property manually. And you can just put in the information. It's going to ask you for the address of the property, confirmation of your information, your tenant's information, and then the assistance amount. Please, this is asking if there's any other assistance you've received connected to this unit. Please make sure you're letting us know about other rental payments that may be coming in, the total months, the total amount the tenant has paid over the course of those months, and how much they're contracted to pay monthly. So for example, if there's 5 months that they haven't paid for fully, and over those 5 months, they've only paid me $500, but they should be paying me $1,000, it will now, oh, I didn't answer this question, which is why it didn't calculate it. there. So you can see it will automatically then update that information for you as to what's there. Let me just exit out of this one. If you have more than one tenant who has either already applied or you're anticipating is going to apply, you can download a template here. It's an Excel spreadsheet. You can complete that then for all the information. It's the same information that's in the manual entry field. And then you want to just upload it back up, and it will sort all of your residence entries now in the table. So you have all the information there by each one. And I'm just going to go back in here for just a quick second. That confirmation number that Joanna mentioned. So if you get that email prompt saying, you know, Alana Branda, your tenant at 1234 Main Street has applied, you know, please complete your end of the application. Here's a confirmation number. That's where you're going to put this number in, and that's what's going to help us match the information up in the system. And then on this next screen is where you get to upload, and we thank you. We know someone has already recognized the spacing on these pages is off a little bit. The software developer is working on what's going on with some of the spacing here. But this is where you are going to upload any supporting documentation that you have. And if you had multiple residents listed on this page, that you would, as Joanna mentioned, you would be able to go into each one and upload their information for them. So I want to just go back. Let me exit. Oh, it might not let me. See, I want to exit out of here. And it is not letting me. We are clearly still working through some tweaks in some of the systems, but I wanted to try to show you your dashboard real quick. So bear with me a moment. I think I'm just going to log back in. But when you log in, you will see your dashboard. And this is where we were talking about that you do need different accounts, because if you see here, I'm in a landlord dashboard. If I start new application, the only applications that I will be able to get to is that landlord side of the information. I will not be able to get to a tenant application to help them. So you would want to make a separate account if you are supporting tenants and allowing them, those without email addresses, to get in and work on an application. And you will see here any of your applications that have been started and not submitted, and then you'll also see your submitted ones. So as I believe Joanna mentioned also, if you saw in the application, there's only one place where you actually enter in where that payment's going to. So if you do have multiple properties where you want the payment going to different CVRS registered entities, you want to do a separate application for each one. So again, you can do it in the same account. You would just now go here, click, and start another application. So I just wanted to go over that because I know that's a lot of the pre-questions we've been getting are with that. And so I will stop sharing now, and we can work to get through some of the Q&As and chats. So let me start here. Okay, there's a couple it looks like we've already been answering. So there's a question about on-site teams are having challenges with initiating an application on behalf of residents. If the application is not completed and they want to save and continue at a later date, it appears the information is not saving and the application has to be started over. So that information should be saving in the same way that I just showed you, allowing you to resume. Please, if you are having an issue, take a screenshot, send it in to us. Let us know the browser you're using, you know, and any other information so we can have the software team look into it. You know, because unfortunately with that information, I don't have another response in terms of what might be going wrong. It was reported to our team if residents do not want to provide income documentation, they can submit an affidavit or other form certifying. That is correct. They are allowed to do a written attestation or self-certification of their income. There is no standard form that they have to complete. They can write on a piece of paper and literally take a picture of it with their smartphone and submit that in. It does need to clearly note what their pre-COVID income was, what happened, why that income has changed, and what their current income is. And then they can just upload that in their application with their documentation. If an ineligible applicant initiates an application, is the managing agent obligated to complete our portion of the application, even though the applicant is ineligible based on the parameters established by the county? So if someone answers the pre-eligibility or skips the pre-eligibility because someone helps them who already has the account, you will get a prompt asking you to complete an application. It is actually, we are required by the Treasury Department to try to reach out to landlords multiple times to try to engage you in the process. So we will try to engage you in the process. If you tell us, I don't believe this person is eligible, or, we can have that conversation. But if they're ineligible, we're not going to award them a grant, and we are going to find them ineligible also. So ultimately, you don't need to complete another one. How soon do we need to cancel a failure to pay suit? We have court next week, and it's not yet been determined if the tenant will be approved for assistance. So it does need to be canceled at the time. It's an expectation of receiving the award, of receiving the grant. We would ask where you have the flexibility to try to work with tenants who may be in this weird position in terms of the timing of the assistance, where you can. But definitely, if you get to the point that there is a red and white that you're scheduling something with the sheriff, do let us know. I think I saw another question pop up in terms of evictions. Those are one of our priority criteria. So there is a question in the tenant's application that asks them specifically if they have received either a notice for a hearing from the court or a judgment or red and white to let us know that, so that we can try to clear those out beforehand. If a resident starts the application, does the landlord need to have two separate accounts or just the account for the landlord? So if the resident does the application on their own, that is fine. That is all that needs to happen. If you are making yourself or any of your staff available to assist tenants in completing the application, that's the point that you would need two separate accounts, because you need an account for yourself to complete the landlord side of the application, and you cannot use the same account to complete a tenant side of the application. So it's only if you are making yourself available, which we hope many of you will do, that you would need to set up those two separate accounts. What if the resident has not paid rent in over 12 months? Can we still apply for assistance? And do we still have to renew that for 90 days, since the $12,000 will not cover the entire year? The resident can definitely still apply. And you would still need to accept the terms of the program. So you would still need to offer a renewal and meet the other terms, even if we are not able to pay off 100% of the arrears. How long will the program be open? Unfortunately, we don't have fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, we don't have an end date yet for the program availability. We will continue to take applications for as long as we can, and we will be monitoring very closely the amount of funds going out, and will provide, as we anticipate getting closer to provide that date, but we encourage everyone to get their application in sooner rather than later for that purpose. I will note also, this is the $59 million that we have from the federal bill that was passed late December and very late December. And there is still the Rescue Act bill that was passed more recently. So we know that we have additional funds coming. We don't know exactly when we'll be getting those funds. The Treasury Department has not released additional information on when those funds will be available to the communities to use. So we're going to continue collecting applications for as long as we can, for as long as we see we have funds available. Will the awarded funds come to me or the tenant? Checks are or ACH payments, however you're registered in the county's central vendor registration system and CVRS. That is how the money will release and go out. So in 99% of the cases, the funds go directly to the landlord to be credited to that tenant's account. There are, some cases, more so when we come to some of those room rentals or smaller, where a check may be issued in the name of the client. For a landlord, how exactly does a tenant participate? What do they need to do, provide, certify, etc.? So on the landlord side, you saw you're just providing your tenant's contact information. You're providing the information on how much they're supposed to be paying you each month, any other assistance that is coming in to pay the rent in that unit, whether it was a one-time or whether it was a more consistent, like the rental assistance program from HHS or the rent supplement program from HOC or a voucher of any sort. So and how much they've paid you. So you're providing us confirmation of all of that information, and you are uploading the documents appropriate to confirm that information. And you're providing your CVRS registration information. So from a landlord side, that's the documentation that is really needed. If you're supporting your tenants, they need to provide income documentation. They need to provide documentation confirming their residency, and they need to provide that similar rent information. So they're going to need a rent ledger. They may ask for a copy of their lease. I think I saw it pop up before in terms of if you might have done income certification for them, they might ask you for some of their income documentation if they're struggling to find extra copies of any of that information. So you can help them by supporting any documentation requests that they might have, or again, really just, walking them through the application, having staff that can help them upload their documents and whatnot. With that, I want to just highlight one point. Once you hit submit at the end of the application, you are locked out of it. You are not able to get back in to resume it, to add more documents, to change CVRS registration information or anything. So please try to collect all of your information and encourage your tenants to collect all their information before they before you hit submit at the end there, so that you don't get locked out. I think we answered this, but if you have already filed a failure to pay rent, if your tenant does note that on their application, the high needs geographic priorities areas and the unemployed for 90 days, those are the applications that will be prioritized for processing first. And documentation needed for the applicant. That I believe I just went through, but so they need income documentation, residency documentation, rental documentation, and I think I actually forgot to mention, they do need a photo ID for all adults in the household. So that is all of the Q&A ones. I see there's stuff in the chat too, but I see Joanna's been trying to answer a lot of it. So Joanna, are there ones you noticed that you didn't get to yet that we should cover?
Alana, could you perhaps specifically address whether tenants who use housing vouchers are eligible for this program?
Yes, that is a difference from the previous round. Anyone who has any type of housing subsidy, whether it's a housing choice voucher, any other program, they would be eligible. Of course, just for the expected amount that they are supposed to have been paying towards their rent. And we would be encouraging them and hoping to work with their landlords or the whoever is administrating that voucher, if it is an income-based one, to make sure that that is adjusted to their correct income moving forward so that they don't continue to incur these arrears due to changed income.
And Alana, I'm seeing a lot of questions around the neighborhoods that we are prioritizing applications from, and how long we'll be prioritizing those applications. And of course, the ever-present question about how long it might take to start actually turning around results on these applications.
Yeah, so we are really just getting into everything. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind getting the program up and running, getting all of our team acclimated to the new system that we are using. So we're really just starting to get into everything. And, we need a little bit of time to kind of just assess and see how many applications are coming in that meet that priority criteria. We anticipate that most likely for the first month, we will be focusing on ones that meet any of those 3 priority criteria. And then depending on where the applications are coming in from, and the eviction and unemployment notations, we'll start opening it up to more and more of the other applications and starting to shift that priority around. But unfortunately, until we're really in them and really going through them, we won't be able to say to certain on that. Tenants should be starting to hear from the caseworkers, any day now if they haven't already, and we will work to move these cases as quickly as possible. As I think I heard Joanna mention when I got back on, to the extent that the tenants are uploading all their documents and that you are able to match with that rent confirmation and put in your documents and have your CVRS registration already taken care of, those are the things that are going to help us expedite the application. We found in our previous rounds that the applications that really kind of held us up a lot were those ones where we were chasing documents, where we are trying to find a landlord and confirm, their vendor registration information with the county. That those were the ones that really took a lot out of us. I do also want to note that we did hear from many of you after round 2 that, there were tenants that got denied because we couldn't get in touch with them. So we do have in the tenant application, there is an option for the tenant to select that you can contact others on my behalf, and they are required to acknowledge that we will be contacting their landlord on their behalf. So hopefully that shouldn't be as much of a barrier too, that we may reach out to some of you and say, hey, Alana in unit 115, she put in an app. We've been trying to call her for a week and we can't get in touch with her and we need this photo ID. Can you put a notice by her door? Can you knock and make sure she's okay? And help us facilitate that. So we do have that option available to us now at this point too. So hopefully between those things and just the new system, the portal will help us expedite the applications much quicker than we were doing before.
Also, a lot of questions now, Alana, about whether tenants need to currently reside at the property or whether they are eligible for this program if they have already moved out.
Good question. This is for a current primary residence. So unfortunately, this program will not help with the arrears that someone left you with. It is for where they are currently living.
Seeing some questions about tenants who owe more than $12,000 and whether there are additional funds to cover people in those circumstances.
Yeah, so we do have some limited additional funds for some very specific cases. Generally, if it's under 30% AMI, unemployed, meeting some of that priority criteria, and those we will handle on a case-by-case basis. So, that should not be a barrier to applying. Beyond that, I am not aware of any other specific funds that are just automatically available. Of course, if someone is facing an eviction, we do have our general housing stabilization services, and we do have our emergency assistance coalition who have small pockets of funds, but those are generally assistance of $500 to $1,500 more, not excessive amounts. I think I see connected, and there's a lot of chat and questions coming in. So if we miss something, guys, everyone, please, just bear with us. There's a lot coming in our way, but if they were behind and it just got worse because of COVID, can they still apply? They can, but we can only provide assistance for the COVID related months. So we can only provide assistance, from arrears issued or arrears accumulated since that March timeframe of 2020. We cannot go back farther than that with any of these funds. I see something coming in terms of accessing this presentation. So I believe DHCA will send out a recording. I will note that this presentation was focused on you as the landlord, so I'm not sure that I would share that with the tenant, but there is a wealth of information on our website. There's FAQs in English and Spanish at the moment. The other 5 languages will be uploaded by Monday, I believe. We have checklists in all 7 languages of documents needed for tenants. We have flyers there, and we are working on some mini videos for training for tenants also to help them with this information. And if someone needs assistance, if they need assistance walking through the application, or do not have internet or email, and it's not something that you are able to provide, they can call 311 and someone will call them back and provide them assistance with that information. Going back, there's some new stuff that came in to the Q&A too also. So I think we answered some of these already. The failure, how soon do we need to cancel? You need to, we have court next week. So I think we answered that one already, that it's an acceptance of the funds that really says where you need to cancel. And I'm going to tie this in with the other question that came in. If you drop a tenant holding oversuit in order to receive the funds, how long does the landlord have to allow the tenant to remain in the property? So you are required to offer them a lease renewal for a 90-day period. It is up to them to accept that lease renewal, but you are required to offer it to them. And you are not allowed to begin any new eviction actions until a minimum of 30 days after the assistance period is over. So if we, we can pay arrears and we can also pay prospective rent under some circumstances. So if we were to give you a check today on April 23rd that covers the arrears, but also provided assistance for May and June's rent, so the person is covered through June 30th, you would not be allowed to begin any new actions until July 30th. So again, it's for the duration of time that the funds are covering plus 30 days after that. And then there's also the obligation to offer a 90-day lease renewal. Let me see what else is coming in. Once the landlord initiates an application on behalf of the resident, does an email go to the resident? What happens if the resident doesn't respond to the email from DHHS? So yes, the same kind of email that you would get saying someone, this person said they live at this address and has started an application, the tenant will get one too. We will we're going to do our best to kind of comb through landlord ones that are not matched and try to reach those tenants and make sure that, if they didn't receive the email or if they need that phone call and try to match them. But I would encourage you to communicate with your tenants that you did apply on their behalf, and here's all the program information, and again, help them, facilitate with them if they need assistance to actually complete their end of the application. We cannot provide assistance if there is not a tenant application on file. So, until that tenant application is there, we are not able to assign it to a caseworker or do any processing of it. You cannot reject the, there's a question if you can reject the assistance because a resident owes too much. honestly, I'm not going to go into, I'm not a lawyer. I pretend to be one sometimes, but I really shouldn't. But I think that's really a legal question. If someone is presenting you with funds to pay rent, you know, that is really a legal conversation of your decision to reject or not those funds. So I would encourage you to speak with whoever you consult for your legal authority on what you want to do with that.
Alana, there was a question that I missed from earlier, specific to the affordable housing conversation. Will we accept an income certification from someone in that process from the past 12 months? And if so, how do they actually send us that information?
So the income certification part is just on the tenant side. It is not on the landlord side of the application. So the tenant needs to submit income documentation to certify their income. They can do that by either showing their 2020 taxes or by submitting documentation from the previous 30 days or that self-declaration statement. So if you have documentation that would be helpful to them, you are welcome to make copies for them or, you know, do a digital scan for them, but they actually have to submit that on their side of the application. And thanks, Joanna, just re-put in the chat the information that the tenants need to put in. Okay, I see there's another question. If the tenant can use your email address and can you work together and can one application be put in? No, the tenant has to put in their own application. The landlord has to put in their own application. And again, they cannot be from the same account because once you create that account is locked to the type of application that you set it for. How it gets set, just to clarify that is that when you start a new application on the website, the very first time you go on, you're going to click that I'm doing this as a landlord or I'm doing this as a resident. You're going to go through those pre-eligibility screenings, and then it's going to ask you for your contact information to set up an account. So whatever series of pre-eligibility questions you did, if you did the tenant questions, that account is going to be set up and locked as a tenant account. If you did the landlord questions, that account then will be locked and set up as a landlord account. So you do need a separate account and you do need a separate application for both the tenant and the landlord side. Within each of those, you can have multiple applications though. So again, you don't need to set up an account for every tenant you have. You can set up one account that you are willing to let tenants use or willing to walk tenants through doing their application. And you can help, you know, 100 tenants under the same account you set up. And similarly, as a property, if you have multiple properties, you can do that all under one landlord account. So you don't need a separate account for each application, but you do need a separate account for each type. The other thing, I'm not sure, I feel like I saw a question about this, and I don't think we mentioned it, but you know, with the confirmation numbers, we are seeing sometimes that you as a landlord and your tenant might happen to be doing it at this, you know, right around the same time and not realizing that each other was completing the application. So if after you've already completed the application, you get an email that says, you know, your tenant has completed an application, please go in and do your side. Here's the confirmation number to use. You do not need to do a second application. We will manually match them. But if you have not already done that, please do use the confirmation number provided. Can a landlord also call 311? Yes, you can call 311. There's limited information that 311 has, just putting it out there. Most of the time they are taking your request, and we will have someone from the COVID rent relief team call back to try to triage and help you through any issue you're dealing with.
Alana, could you speak a little bit to the other nonprofit partners that we're working with to assist tenants in these applications?
Sure, great question. And maybe Frank, I don't know if you want to come in and say any more about that, but DHCA has contracted with a number of our community partners, LEDC, HIP, CASA, Renters Alliance, Maryland Legal Aid, HPRP, Homeless Persons Representation Project, So the first group are doing a lot of tenant info sessions and providing also assistance to tenants to walk them through application. And then of course, Maryland Legal Aid and Homeless Persons Representation Project are on site at the courts to provide tenants with assistance. So I don't know, Frank, if you have anything.
Very, very much so. So these organizations have committed staff familiar with the application, standing by and currently working with a lot of tenants, working with how to apply. They can work with you on specific properties. If you have a population that you're having trouble communicating with, connecting with, or that specifically need assistance in organizing their information, understanding what's required, the phone numbers and connection information is available at the Montgomery County website. That's the main website, montgomerycountymd.gov/renters. And there's a list of support organizations. That information is going out on tens of thousands of flyers. So we're hoping that you can leverage their staff and their understanding of the programs and other support for your tenants that's available to help them and help you complete this as soon as possible.
I just want to mention one other thing, in terms of assisting your tenants complete the application or doing the applications yourself. One of the feedbacks that we heard in the previous rounds was it was very challenging, that people had absolutely no clue where they were in the process. And so one of the reasons that we have taken the time to develop this new portal and work on it is it does provide with status updates on where your application is. So whether that application is, we're working to match it with a landlord or a tenant companion application, whether it's under initial review, it's been assigned to a caseworker with a supervisor final review, awaiting documentation, processed, we have all those updates built in. So if you do create your account, you can see that. And if you also assist your tenants in having an account set up so that your tenants can use, you're enabling them to be able to access that information also and see that information. So to the extent possible, we really do encourage you and really appreciate the support that you are able to provide in doing those applications yourself and walking through. And again, we do recognize there are some hiccups or tweaks that need to be made in adjusting with a completely new system built out. And so we thank you for your patience with us and kind of pre-sending those to us so that we can try to get those fixed also.
All right, this seems like a great time to kind of summarize the program one last time and then let everyone get out right on the dot at 3. Alana, do you want to do that summary or shall I?
Go ahead.
Oh, goodness. Okay, no pressure. All right. So in summary, for your residents, we are looking to see that they have had a loss of income that's directly related to COVID, that they have been a resident of Montgomery County since at least August of 2020, that they owe you, the landlord, at least $1,000, and that they're earning no more than 50% of the area median income for their household size. Both you, the landlord, and they, the tenant, are welcome to start the application. The application will be considered for funding regardless of who starts it. And we ask both of you to participate in the process because that allows us to verify the information that is being provided. Now, households are eligible for up to $12,000, and this is for current tenants who still reside at your property, as the goal of the program is to help prevent homelessness in Montgomery County. We understand that both landlords and tenants are stakeholders in this process. We do appreciate the time that you are putting in. We'll make sure that the slides that were used today are available to you after this, but there is also a lot of information on the application website itself. Most of the subjects that we covered today are there under the FAQ section. So we strongly encourage you to go to MC311/rent relief. That's where you can apply, and it's where you can learn more about the program. So thank you everyone for your time today. We really appreciate it.
And I thank you also. This is Frank Demaray. Just to add that there are additional information in support of landlords through the COVID period. The DHCA website has a special link at the top when you go to Montgomery County and main website and just put in DHCA. Landlord support across all the different issues related to the current environment is available there, but we will continue to update and support information. The main website that Joanna just spoke to is for this program. On an ongoing basis, we're going to be sending out the email blast that we've done, we call Working Together. We're going to try and keep a regular update going on this issue and other issues. And we would be very happy to respond at DHCA on issues other than this that are related to your relationship with the county. So just want to let you know that we're going to continue to maintain all of the support that we have out there and continue to be responsive and update that as available. So with that, we really are right at 3 o'clock. And this email will go out to everyone who attended and that we will share the video of this on our webpage, and then we'll be making additional information available through that same communication. So thank you very much. And we look forward to working through this with you.